Hi, everybody. Inside here at DLLS Stars, Sam Nestler, Owen Newkirk. We're going to talk to you today about who's going to win the Stanley Cup. More importantly, as we're getting down to the final 10, 15 games of the regular season, who we think in each conference actually has a shot at winning the Stanley Cup and who might actually win it. The interesting thing is that we're a Dallas Stars podcast. The Stars, Sam, are really trending in the right direction from a betting side of things because they all seem to think that the Stars are one of the top teams as far as contenders to win the Cup. Most of the betting lines we've looked at seem to suggest that the Florida Panthers are going to be it, but instead it's actually the Stars in second because of the Mikko Rantanen trade kind of vaulting them up. Now, they're a great team anyway, but that sort of rise up really has made the Stars one of the odds-on favorites besides the defending Stanley Cup champion.
Yeah, and it's almost like, do we want them to be? Like, they are kind of quietly just sneaking along, having a great season, quietly in the top 5, 10 of the league, and then the trade deadline comes along, and now they're starting to get a lot more attention. So, deserved. They deserve that attention, but I know some people around Dallas are saying, well, maybe we just wanted to stay a little quieter and sneak into a playoff run. But yeah, they deserve to be up in that ranking. It's just, they're a very good team.
Well, let's talk about the Eastern Conference first, then we'll get to the Stars in the West in a minute. Florida Panthers are the defending Stanley Cup champions, and they were very active at the deadline. It seemed like they were requiring, or at least linked to acquire everybody. Now, they didn't take the entire league, but they are going to be a very, very difficult out in the Eastern Conference. I know the Washington Capitals are having a phenomenal season. A bit of a surprise because I don't think anybody expected the Caps, who barely got in last year, to suddenly win the President's Trophy. And it's very possible that they could do that. They are having a phenomenal season. But I still think the road to the Stanley Cup final through the East goes through the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, the only thing, you're absolutely right, Florida, especially they added Brad Marchand, and now they have a chance to have a Marchand, Bennett, Kachuk line roll out in the playoffs, which
agitators.
is just going to annoy everybody on the ice. But the only thing I worry about with Florida, they're a very good team, and this could be just my own worry, is they've played a lot of hockey. They made it all the way to the Stanley Cup final basically on one leg 2 years ago, made it all the way to the Stanley Cup final and won it last year with a bunch of people that were dragging through injuries again. They're injured right now with Kachuk and Marchand both out. That's my only worry with Florida. If they can stay somewhat healthy and not just hit an absolute wall in terms of energy, you're absolutely right. It runs through them.
If it's not the Florida Panthers, though, who stands out to you the most? Washington, again, way overperforming what the preseason expectations were, and now they're at a point in the season where you say they really are a good team and they can't seem to lose. I think Logan Thompson's been a really big addition in the net for them. Charlie Lindgren deserves a lot of credit. Their goaltending tandem has been really solid. They've scored more than we thought. They've been a better defensive team. And the chase for Alex Ovechkin going after Gretzky's goals record has not been a big distraction. Our co-host Craig Ludwig loves to talk about distractions. It hasn't been for them. But are they actually as good for a playoff team as they appear to be in the regular season?
I don't know. It's crazy to look at the difference. Like you said, they were like a minus 26 or something like that when they made the playoffs last year, and they're plus up in the 60s, up towards the top of if not leading the NHL. So they've kind of flipped that script. They're scoring a lot, as you mentioned, but they're also defending a lot better. So I still don't believe, like we just said, it goes through Florida. So if I'm putting them against Florida, I don't believe they're tough enough to win. I don't think they're deep enough to beat them. But I am not going to say what I said 3 months ago, even or 2 months ago, in saying that they can't win it, because they have proven over and over again that they are a deeper team. But we have seen so many times a team dominate the regular season and just not put it together in the playoffs.
Well, if you look at the teams that aren't, at the top of their divisions in the East, everybody keeps waiting, at least in Ontario and most of Canada, for the Maple Leafs to break through and win a cup for the first time in eons. It's been a very, very long time for Toronto. And most everybody in the NHL is happy to see that continue. They seem to be creeping closer and closer. And we said, I think when our preseason predictions, that the addition of their head coach, Craig Berube, the style, having them play more of a playoff style hockey throughout the season would really benefit them. Now, I'm very much of the belief of I'll wait till they get over that hump, because getting through the first two rounds is exceedingly difficult in the NHL. And some people believe that getting past the second round is actually the hardest round of a Stanley Cup playoff run. Still have halfway to go when you do that. I know watching the Stars over the last decade plus, that second round series was a bogey for them for a long time until they finally broke through, and they've made some deep runs because of that. But as good as the Maple Leafs are offensively, I'm just not sure I'm willing to sit there and say those are my favorites. Again, I think it's hard not to pick the favorites in the Florida Panthers. But for me, I think that the way that Carolina plays, if they can get better goaltending, which is always a question mark with them, they can be a team that plays the same way all the time. So regular season or playoffs, it doesn't really matter. They can play low-scoring games. They can play high-scoring games. How do you feel about both Toronto and Carolina?
Yeah, I think they always say you have to lose in order to win. Well, Toronto's done plenty of the losing side of it. But I don't think – I would say if Toronto was in the Metropolitan, I'd give them a shot to make it to the Eastern Conference Final. But because they are in the Atlantic, their 2 rounds are going to be Tampa and Florida, most likely. You're not getting through that.
Give or take,
You're just not getting through that. You're probably not getting through Tampa, honestly. Vasilevsky's looking like Vasilevsky again towards the end of the season, and he has shown in the playoffs what he can do. I just don't think Toronto's a good enough team to beat them. If they somehow do, they're probably pretty beat up from it, and then they go against Florida. So I just don't see a path for them because of where they lie in the Atlantic Division. For Carolina, they have been exactly that second-round team you were just talking about. They have hit that second round. They're one of the winningest teams in the regular season in like the last 10 years, but for whatever reason, they can never put it together, and they just lost a guy who dominates in the playoffs, Mikko Rantanen, who's now here in Dallas. Logan Stankoven's a big addition for them. They got some help, but I just don't see them as a threat. I don't really see the whole Metropolitan Division as a threat to win a cup right now, honestly.
Including your beloved New Jersey Devils?
I think they are free-falling. And they are losing players left and right.
Yeah, the injuries are piling up for New Jersey. They do have Jacob Markstrom back from his injury stint. That is a plus because he was the piece that everybody thought was going to be, moving them past where they were before. But then Jack Hughes has a season-ending injury and a bunch of other continue to sort of pile up in that. They have been successful without some of those guys, though, right? Dougie Hamilton, Jonas Siegenthaler is out as well. But we'll see. Of the Tampa, New Jersey, and all the teams vying for the wild card. Look, it does happen. Hockey's different than other sports where the 8th seed can go a long way, and the LA Kings prove that you can win from that position. The Nashville Predators have made it to a Stanley Cup final from the 8th seed. They didn't win that. Can you legitimately lean on anybody not of those top teams that we've already brought up at length? Whether it's, I think Tampa's a good team, and they've got some pieces of their Stanley Cups. They won 2. And they still have Vasilevsky and Hedman and Braden Point, and they've got good pieces. Kucherov, one of my favorite players to watch. But of all the good storylines of those teams fighting to get in, I don't see any of them being real cup contenders right now unless they just absolutely catch lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, nice.
No pun intended.
Yeah, that was nice. Because I was going to say the Lightning are the one that stand out to me just because of the names you mentioned and what they've done in the past. I don't think they're the same team as they were. But I would say, and straight up for me in the Eastern Conference, if Florida doesn't win the Stanley Cup, I see Tampa or Ottawa.
You going to the final?
Coming out of the East. Those are the teams I see coming out of the East.
Out of nowhere.
Just get Brady Tkachuk in the playoffs and how hard that team plays. I could see that's it. I really don't trust anyone from the Metro, and I don't believe that Toronto is a legitimate contender.
Ooh. All right, let's go to the Western Conference now. And this we've been talking about all season long could be an absolute bloodbath because if you wanted to say this team comes out of the West, Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado, Vegas, Edmonton, Los Angeles, any of those top 6. And then that's even, leaning on Minnesota. Minnesota depends. Is Kaprizov ever going to come back?
Yeah,
we don't know.
Healthy. They're different team.
And Joel Eriksson Ek got hurt, and we'll see. I think Minnesota's a bit of a free fall myself, but boy, those 6 teams I just rattled off, I could legitimately argue why any one of those. Of those, I think LA still has, they're a really good home team, and they have a lot of home games down the stretch.
They're getting close.
They're actually not in that bubble of being in the wild card, maybe, although they're, it's congested in the West. To me, because it's a divisional format, and we talked on our show recently, if you want to go back and watch us on our All DLS website, check it out on YouTube. We did a segment earlier about how I would prefer them going back to the 1 through 8 format. I know you agreed with me on that because the fact that Winnipeg, Dallas, and Colorado. 2 of those 3 are going to face each other in the first round. Whoever finishes as the top will avoid that first round fray of the other 2. That means one of them is out before the second round.
Yeah, and only one of them can make it to the conference final, which is just, it's a shame. Put aside all this stuff about us being Dallas and all that. Just not being able to see the best teams play in the Western Conference Final is a shame, and that's part of that 1 through 8 thing that we talked about. But looking at the path changes so much, and now Dallas all of a sudden is thinking we need to catch Winnipeg because now Minnesota dropped, Colorado now moves up, and now all of a sudden your path went from Minnesota and Winnipeg to Colorado and Winnipeg if you don't come in first. So the Central is wild. The Pacific I still think is a level below. Not saying they're not contenders. I believe the same exact thing you said. Vegas, you just can never ever count out, and Edmonton can catch fire at any point with who they have. But the Central is just going to be a bloodbath, and whoever comes out of that, I believe, if they're not too beaten up, that's the best team in the West.
The one thing I will say is I'm not sold that the Edmonton Oilers can get back to the Stanley Cup final and they can get out of the West. I think Vegas is going to be a real problem. LA Kings could be surprising because they're so good at home. Darcy Kemper's given them very good, above average, adequate goaltending, and they can play low scoring games and grind it out a bit. But yeah, if one of those top 3 from the Central can survive the first 2 rounds, as you just very well put, very eloquently put, they would be my favorite. But don't count out Vegas because I think they could be a real problem. The question is, you don't have to worry if you're in the Sean Shapiro, one of our other members of our show, famously told us, and I agree with him, it doesn't matter what the other conference does because all you have to worry about is trying to get to the Stanley Cup final. You're going to face a good team. Even if it's not the best team, You'll face a good team. It's going to be a hard one. It'll be really interesting to see what the condition of whichever team makes it out of 3 rounds of the West. If they're still intact, I would pick the West team to win, even against Florida, but it's not going to be easy.
And it's going to be interesting to see. Dallas and Colorado specifically have had a ton of injuries. Winnipeg hasn't had a ton of injuries. It's going to be interesting to see in that top bracket if that means Dallas and Colorado are due some luck, or if it means Winnipeg's going to fall down and have their injury trouble. That could be the difference.
Don't forget to check out our regular podcasts, our DLLS Stars, whether it's a regular daytime show, our pre and post games, or these sort of mini pods. We are very much appreciative of your support. Like and subscribe. Check us out at alldlls.com.